Today's webinar. As you can see, I'm not in Cologne. I'm not in my home office. Actually, I'm in Düsseldorf at the Vioso company. And our dear host, Emanuel Züger, CEO of the Vioso company, he's actually our host for this today's session. And this session, welcome.
Welcome to Düsseldorf.
Oh, you can say welcome to me because you're the host, right?
Absolutely. Welcome to Düsseldorf, which is always a bit picky, but we don't have an issue with that. Yeah. Welcome to Vioso for this day's webinar.
Yeah. So today, as you can see, this is about Vioso integration in how to get Vioso auto camera-based auto calibration into Pandoras Box. And we'll find out how this works with the help of Emanuel. And I will show you the Pandoras Box workflow after the calibration thing. And yeah, let's quickly go through today's contents. Oh, by the way, sorry for the delay. So we had some little issues. Maybe you know that if you go in a show and there is a graphics card which makes some clouds and things like that. So sorry for the little delay. We quickly switched to a different system, so we had to readjust some few things. Sorry for the delay. Okay, today we go through the auto alignment. Let me try to update this PowerPoint. There you can see it. First thing is the Vioso auto alignment presented by Emanuel Züger. Where to use it, which editions do we have, what cameras to use, and a demo of the dome. Maybe you can see it already a little bit. We will show it more with this webinar, of course. And after that, we export the files into Pandoras Box, and I will show you how they have to be handled there and give you a few hints what you have to do to make it work in Pandoras Box. And of course, we show a little bit of playback, but that's not a big point. And at the end, we do a little question and answer, so you can put in your questions as you know it already in the questions tool from GoToWebinar. We will go through questions after we present it, so feel free to write whenever you want, but we will go through the questions after our presentation. Yeah, so that's for today. Welcome, and you have the word, Emanuel. I give you a little space here so you can show everything around.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for this introduction, and thank you for making this webinar possible. So, Vioso auto calibration might be known to some people. It's a camera-based system to set up multiple projectors. So, auto calibration is used to make complex projection scenarios easier to handle and faster to set up. And today showed how important that is because we set up the system in just 5 minutes again due to a delay. So Vioso is available in 2 versions. The product we call is Vioso Integrate because the purpose is to integrate in third-party tools like Pandoras Box. Integrate and Integrate Plus are a little different. So Integrate is the standard version, less costly, that's the Plus. And it's first of all done for every kind, capable for every kind of surfaces. So we do not differ in, let's say, Plus can only make domes and Standard can only make flat screens. All flat, curved dome screens and also arbitrary screens. Let's say a rock face, a facade can be calibrated, and we call that a flattening because the Integrate Plus works on a 3D model. So this is the 3D mapping that you all know, where a 3D model and UV mapped content needs to be fit together. So that's a main difference. The number of projectors and the number of servers are theoretically unlimited. So our calibration system is able to scale with the hardware setup that you have. And the second big difference then are the number of cameras. A single camera is what Integrate does, and multiple cameras, which is a way more complex workflow, is a part of Vioso Integrate Plus. Therefore, today a dome is a single camera. So even very complex setups are possible even with a standard version. the camera is a big part of the setup. So in many cases, we provide the cameras as part of our service. Well, you can start with webcams. Nearly every camera is workable that you can edit a little bit. So there's not much you need to do with the camera, but make sure that it's simply providing an image and not doing any funny stuff like filters or auto exposures and stuff. So in closed environments, a webcam does already a good job. But when you go to larger setups, fixed setups with fixed installed cameras, there's a selection of cameras that we provide. Multi-purpose is a camera with a zoomable lens. So you can install it in several places. It's good as a multi-purpose weapon in your pocket. A wide angle lens, very wide angle, 138 degree, can capture the widest panoramas. It's in fact nearly like a fisheye lens. Has a heavy distortion that you need to cope with, but there are tools to do so. Especially for multi-camera setups, where the lens and the distortion-free lens is important. We have a so-called VR and SIM camera kit. And if you do a dome like today or other setups like panoramic displays, fisheye lenses do a great job. So we have a very powerful fisheye sensor. Well, and that's what we provide. But if you have cameras in your stock, including TV cameras or other computer vision cameras, they can be used as long as you know how to operate and as long as these cameras are recognized by Windows. So today we have a very interesting setup. We have 12 projectors. Maybe you can see already the projectors and into why we show that. So we have 12 projectors which are connected to two Pandoras Box servers. One is a quad server and one is an octo server. We have a Pandoras Box Manager, a dedicated device, and everything is, yes, there it is, beauty. And everything is connected via network, nothing new for you. So that very well-known setup is now extended with a Vioso calibration device. It's another computer in this case, so you can go with your laptop on site and do the calibration from there. But the Vioso software can also run on the Pandoras Box Manager. So it's just to show how minimal invasive the system can be set up. And last but not least, we have one camera that is also a network camera. So as I said, these kind of camera devices powered by network and therefore are easily to integrate. So it's just for you to see that. That's the cameras we talk about, very little, very small. Actually, this is the camera that we're using here right now, and this holds in my hand. So that's the setup we talk about. And now I like to invite you to the to visit the Pandoras Box Manager to see how that is set up. With setup, I mean the setup of Pandoras Box Manager. So that's now the surface of the Pandoras Box Manager, and we need to deal with the clients. Remember, we have our own dedicated calibration computer, so there's no need for us to work on the Pandoras Box Manager, but on the clients. The remote tools come in place to connect. So I will show you on the quad server how that looks like. Just need to exit the full screen to show you that. There we go. So
this now you're in full screen. I think it's your calibration still running.
Full screen. Oh, that's me. Oh, you're right. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Thank you so much. So, in fact, this is how it looks like, but I wanted to start from scratch. So, all you need to do to have a Pandoras Box server able to take part in our calibration network is to either install, Vioso integrate, or simply copy the binaries somewhere on the server. So in fact, there's no install required. So all you need to do is to launch the executable. It's called SP Integrate 64 Excel. Don't mind, we have a tutorial that shows how that works. And once you launch it, it shows up. Sometimes it's hidden. It's something that I learned when setting that up. So the calibration software is already running. It's already running, but sometimes it's hidden. So in that case, simply need just to turn off the, where are you? There we go. Just turn off the taskbar, and when it comes back. Remember, this is only done. This is only required when we set it up initially. So usually you simply launch the calibration executable, and that's it. There are only a very few configurations you must do. So this is the client listening, and the client must be configured to listen to the network. So there are the settings, and in the settings, there's a multi-client node. And here it must be enabled, and the adapter must be selected. In case with multiple adapters, you need to select the adapter with the IP that is part of the calibration network. Usually it's the same network that Pandoras Box Manager also runs to. And in case you install the software, it will ask for a demo. And simply, in this case, that the node maintenance has the checkbox use pure display client license. Sounds a bit weird, but it's nothing else but saying, I'm running with zero display license, so I'm running without a valid license because all the licensing is handled centralized on a Vioso calibration PC, not on a client. So there's no need to add any additional dongle or do any additional activation. So that's just fine to bypass this. Very important is to set the screen split in case we have a mosaic setup. So in this setup, we have a mosaic. So Pandoras Box works well with mosaic, and that is something that needs to be set in the calibration software as well. So in this case, there is a 1x4 mosaic combining all the outputs to a single screen. So we set in the calibration software screen split, which is one display available. And here we split also 1x4 so that the calibration software provides access to each projector individually. That's it. That's all we need to do in configuration. The same configuration has been done on the Octo. And now the calibration can run in the background, can be minimized, can be put in auto start in case you do that as a fixed installation with recalibration features. So this way you can see that the integration itself on the clients is at minimal invasive, as we call it. So now it's time to go back to the desktop of the calibration PC. So on the calibration PC, we have the, I see the calibration PC is not visible. Just give me a moment. I have an idea why it's not working. No, doesn't matter. Just give me a moment. So, it was just the that happens if you do something a bit in a rush. Okay, so let's go to the calibration master, if you want to call it that way. So in fact, we do not have a dedicated master or client application. It's always the same application. And the application where you simply start the calibration is the one that acts as a master. To get information which Pandoras Box clients are available, we have a tool that is called the Abstract Display Calibrator. You need to run this tool prior to running the calibrator. And this tool collects the connected devices, so the connected Pandoras Box servers, and the configuration about the mosaic. So we enter PB quad for the quad server, which has an IP 168.1, and this is the 21. Click on that, and we can see, okay, it's already providing 4 displays. That's the split that we have set, and that matches to the mosaic configuration. We repeat for the Pandoras Box Octo server, which has the IP 168.1.22. And now we get another 8 displays, which matches to the configuration of the mosaic there as well. And by setting apply, we get the configuration saved for the next startup of our calibration. So again, this is done usually only once. You do not need to do that at every calibration. So once we start up, we see already 4 displays on quad, 8 displays on octo, and can simply continue with the calibration. The calibrations are pretty straightforward process, and there are plenty of tutorials showing each aspect of the calibration. So today we use a dome as a very remarkable example. But I'm getting a bit quickly over the calibration because that is a topic for dedicated webinars. And we will provide the resources later. So you select the projectors to calibrate. And first step is to select the projectors to calibrate, which kind of screen, curved screen or dome, and the camera. So this is the fisheye camera. Provide a name for this calibration, which is a bit important because this name will take a role when you export to Pandoras Box. The arrangement of the projectors, in this case, it's not a strip or grid, it's something else, so we call it grid and arbitrary. We do a new scan, and the calibration should begin. So we see now the camera and the camera image. I'm going to configure the camera in a way that it makes most use for this kind of setup. So our calibration cameras, they're very flexible in terms of how to handle a sensor, how to handle cropping, region of interest, how to handle speed and exposure times. So all that is comes very handy if you need to adapt to local situations, because the system not only works in lab conditions, it works also on show conditions, live conditions, conditions that you have not planned. So that's where auto calibration really needs to prove that it is working. The scanning procedure is nearly fully automated. So it goes through a short sequence where you as an operator have the chance to review. So let's say the brightness, you can adjust. In fact, we want to see dots. So we have an inspector, as we call it. It shows if the scan is working properly. So if the dots are green, you can proceed. If the dots have some issues, then probably there's noise. So again, this is something that we are going to cover in a very deeply a tutorial. And of course, our help desk shows that. So for today, you see that's how the scan works, which is now taking over the Pandoras Box clients. So what we see right now is actually executed by Pandoras Box clients. They are connected to the projectors, not our calibrator. So that was projector 1. We have a preview on the dome, so we can see that it's probably okay. It's part of the total content. And now this continues to the next projector, which again goes through the sequence of white pattern. Let's see the dots. Let me have a look at the threshold. That looks good. These are difficult conditions for the camera because we have a lot of light here to have a good view by the TV camera. But even in that condition, which are usually not live conditions, it works quite well. So that can change, of course, if you have sunlight, flashing LEDs, and what could happen in real life conditions. Yeah, looks good. So, well, I think you got the idea how the calibration works. Let's go on and see the next projector. So here again, noise works well, dots look good, and we are good to go. Third projector. The speed of the scan depends on various parameters, the network, sensor speed, so that can change, but is usually not a big thing. So it's usually less than 10 seconds per projector. the pure scanning speed. So you can assume that setting up a projector display is really going pretty fast. So after the scan, we see now already the result. So this is the alignment that you can see. And after the scan, and I can work on this alignment in real time and modify it. So let's say to match with the, in this case, with the shape of the dome. So since we don't know the dome where it is, so there are no markers or something attached, we simply match this manually, which is quite an easy job to do for an operator, since we do not handle each projector individually, but simply editing the whole result of it. At least now you will have noticed that I just calibrated 3 projectors. So I used now a bit of a shortcut not to go through all 12 projectors. That would make this webinar a bit long. So at this moment, you got the idea. It's exactly the same thing with 9 projectors in addition. You can see that the operation works already in real time using the Pandoras boxes to output. So it's really as simple as is it. And me sitting on our laptop doing the calibration and then letting Pandoras box do all the other work is, I think, exactly the workflow that most operators would like also to do on site. Maybe even not using a separate laptop, but a Pandoras Box Manager. So once this is done, we are back, and I'm going to simply to load my previous file as I just canceled the calibration. I said this is now today not the topic to go to the very end, but if you have done it, we have one additional we call it display, a so-called compound display. That's the dome which resembles the calibrated result. When we use that result in our calibration tool also to color match, to fine-tune the warping, to tune individual projectors and stuff. But when we are done, all we need to do is to export. So the interface to Pandoras Box is a file export of our calibration into a calibration format that Pandoras Box can understand. For doing so, we need to have access to the Pandoras Box Manager. If this is running on the same PC, it's easy. Then you simply choose a file folder and you're done. In that case, we set up an access to the Pandoras Box Manager on network level. So this is a shared drive. So that points to the IP of the Pandoras Box Manager. Here it looks in this, it points into a specific folder that is part of the Pandoras Box configuration. And we are going to write the files into the folder assets Vioso calibration, and Thomas will show you more in detail how that works. So all you need to know is, after you've set up the access to Pandoras Box Manager, the location where to save, and then File, Export Mapping. We select the dome, not each projector individually, but the compound display that resembles our calibration. The export format is DirectX X file mesh. That is something you simply need to know. It's not called Kulux Pandoras Box format because it's a generic format that also is used for other applications. It is important to have the checkbox Keep Splits checked because that will provide a single file per projector. You can always read that in our tutorial, so you don't need to take notes or something, or always remember at which time in the video it's explained. So DirectX mesh file and Keep Splits. These are the settings that you as an operator need to do when working with Pandoras Box. The file name is something the files will have such a name. So in doing export, you can decide to make export 1, export 2, or let's say try 1, try 2, simply by renaming the file. And here's the export path that you simply select from the desktop as you are used to work with. And that's it. As soon as you click export, the files are now generated. And in this case, as said before, it's a bunch of files. It's not a single export file, but several export files. And it's exactly one so-called X file that is a mesh, the geometry, how to map a projector, and a bitmap that contains the blending and color matching information. So once the export is done, the job of the calibrator is done. It's now time to stop the output of the calibrator. Now the calibrator instances on the Pandora's box is also closing. Calibrator is still running, unseen in the background, doesn't do anything, but it can be up and running. And now it's time to run Pandoras Box Manager and do the import of the files.
Did you say export done?
Export is done.
I haven't finished my coffee yet.
Well, sorry that it goes so fast. We see that as a feature, but as I said, I cheated. I just calibrated 3 projectors, so it took a bit less time.
All right. So now we have some files here. Let me quickly sort things out.
Sorry for messing up your desktop.
Oh no, it's all fine. You have to use it, right? So we have some export files here from the Vioso software. This is mainly X file with all the information, how the warp is set up, and also the texture information, which part of the texture to present. Speaking of texture, let me show you what texture we are using there. So we are provided 4096 by 4096 DOM master file. So that's the content, how it is produced for this project here. And this is provided by the content creator. So we use a test pattern here. So you also have a nice test pattern generator, I found out.
Exactly, yeah.
That's really nice to know. So a very useful tool there. And this is one out of that test pattern generator, or it's a fixed.
That's a fixed test pattern which you can download from the test pattern generator, because DOMs are generic, not like a panorama.
Yeah.
And they go up to 8K by 8K in different kinds. So yeah, simply use them. It's public domain.
Yeah. So what the X files are doing, the X files are not only doing the correction of the geometrics, but also picking out the correct part of the texture, right? So all the cameras actually are provided the same image, and this is the full texture of the full DOM file. So 4K by 4K master file. And all the cameras are looking at the same thing. So let me quickly show you the setup in Pandora's box. We have actually in the device tree a manager. That's not very interesting. And we have the quad server and the octo server. So 4 outputs and 8 outputs here. We prepared that already. So as you can see, if I go switch to full screen, both applications. So the actual test file and the warps, if you switch the camera on and have a look in there, it's very bright. There you can see it a bit. So that's actually the Pandora's box output. So I can show you that by just jumping around to a different mapping there. And there is a little box still, which I will surely put on our list. So for the blend files. So let me quickly use that workaround to make it look properly. So that's our actual calibration from Vioso. How to do that? As you can see here, that's the folder where all the files are copied into from Emanuel. And this folder is part of our project folder. So I can use it from here and just drag it into my project. And then I have all these files available and I can drop these files on the output. So let me select this output. This is the place where the object file, the X file, has to go to make the warp and the texture part correctly. And this is the part where the blend file goes into. So this bitmap blend file to there, the X file to there. Then you get, of course, active parameters. That's something I don't want to speak about today. And yeah, save those files onto the outputs. I did that as recommended in different webinars already on a different timeline, on a different sequence than my show sequence, so that I have different setups with calibration. I forgot to do that, to switch off the blend files. So you can, if you shift the blend files a bit later, so you can jump in between with blend, without blend, so very quick to adjust maybe projectors or whatever you have to do on site. All right, so after adding those files and sorting them out, what I did here is I named the outputs as the files which are coming in. So the files from Vioso are all labeled display 1, 2, up to 12. And the order is always, so we had a little issues. Maybe you heard about our issues here, so we had to switch things around. And the nice thing was that the Pandoras Box project, we were able to leave that like it was, even by switching all the outputs to different things. And that's because the position of the output has not changed, and the Vioso calibration software is providing these names always to the same position, and that's why the Pandoras Box project is still working so well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was no issue on that side, so we had to find all the displays again. If you do it the first time, you have, of course, to find out which display is where. But with the mosaic setup and dedicated output settings, it follows a really good pattern there, as you can see. So I have the quad server, and this is provided display 1, 2, 3, 4, and the octa server also following that exact rule. So it's something with the real outputs and connections there. So both applications are using that in the same way, and that's working very well.
So you find the logic in both applications always the same. If you have a certain setup, 1 by 4, 2 by 4, for example, then there's top left, top right, and once you have spotted that pattern, the same pattern applies in the Pandoras Box Manager as well. It makes it easy to comparable, easy to get even a complex setup with 12 projectors done.
Both applications rely on the NVIDIA's mosaic settings on the same client, right? Yeah. So that's the reason. All right, so we have the object files, we have the blend maps, and you know where to put them, and you can see the final thing on the dome, and it's looking pretty well. So I even can try to rotate things here, and well, I have to choose both layers. Sorry. No, sorry. There we go, and now rotate, so the whole thing is rotating now. There are a few things I have to mention to make this workflow that way you are looking at it. So there are some configurations and settings we have to do to achieve that result. The first thing that is that the X files, the object files, are correctly in the correct size. You have to set the unit management. You can find it in configuration, unit management there. So we have the project is on a pixel workflow. So I didn't change to 3D units, but I left it in the pixel workflow to be able to use the pixel workflow. In this case, I have to care about this factor very much. So this is important for that, very important that the object files, the X files, have the correct size. So I have to init it with the resolution of the outputs that I'm using. All are the same, so there's no difference there. And if I switch, I can use the init with resolution button. This gives me a pop-up, and in this pop-up I can choose every connected source of my project to calculate this factor to match 1000 pixels to a generic unit in our 3D space. Actually, I use that resolution because that's the resolution of the projectors. And that's also the resolution we set on the output. You can check this by going for the render engine and check the quad server. This is set up by 4 subdivisions, of course, because of the mosaic mode. And each output has a resolution of 1280 by 800. Same applies, of course, for the Octo server, but it's, of course, 8 outputs there, right? Also, we use the 2x4 mode to have the most compact mosaic setup, which is the most performant one. So yeah, so for both applications, that's the best way to use that output. That was the one important thing. So the other important thing is, as I showed you earlier, all the cameras, sorry, switch back to all cameras, please, thanks. All cameras are using the full texture provided, and the object files are picking the correct part of the texture. That means all the outputs have to be provided the full texture, which is 4K by 4K. So therefore, you have to select the camera, and then you find in the inspector bottom left part of the screen, I'll make it a bit bigger, you find some settings which are very important. First thing is the aspect ratio. The aspect ratio has to be 1:1 or 10:10. In this case, that is not making any difference there. This is a 1:1 aspect. Same size of, so it's a quadratic lookup. So I uncheck this checkbox because the output aspect is 16:9, I think, 1200, 800.
16 by 10.
By 10? Okay, 16:10. I'm not using that because my original texture is a 1:1 aspect. That's the first thing to make the camera able to have a different aspect than the output. And the second thing there, also very important, is the texture which the camera look in Pandoras Box provides to the output path. By default, this is set to the output, so this is 1200 by 800, and this is the texture provided to the output. So by default, the aspect is this 1:1, and this will then be pressed to the 1200 by 800 thing, the full texture though, so I have the full texture information, but the resolution is shrink down very much. And then the object file says, I want to have this part of the texture. And this is looking awful on the screen then, because the resolution is small, and then you just take a small part out of it, which is, yeah, very pixely. So yeah, if you don't do that, maybe I can show that. I don't know which projector that is actually. Display 3. Can try display 3. Yes, that's it. If I set that camera 3 back to the output viewport size 1200, then you can maybe you can zoom in there. So the straight lines you can see, maybe. Can you put a big picture on the screen? Oh yeah, you can see it very well there, I think. So that's the 1200 yeah, go a bit to the right, please. Yeah, I think that line is very, yeah, cool. So, and if I switch back now to the full texture, 4K by 4K, then this will change. You will see that it picks the resolution out of, that's a dotted line. Yeah, now you can really see it much better. Thanks. All right, so these 2 points, if you use these 2 points, then you have a very nice final thing to look at. And yeah, everything else you can use Pandoras Box how you use it always. So I switched to turn out the test pattern. There are different test patterns available, so that's for the blend files and things. Turn that off and switch back to the show sequence, and I can show you a little video there. Of course, so we have some DOM contents there. Thank you, Emanuel, for providing these two. Yeah. So nice and smooth. One other thing, before we go into the question and answer session, I made this folder, the Vioso calibration folder. I made this to be a watch folder, and by doing that, as long as Emanuel is not changing the name of the X files and the blend files and just replacing them by another recalibration, for example, we are able to just replace these. Just have to be careful. You have to leave the files from the playback. So if files are blocked from Windows, you cannot replace them, and that's an issue, of course. But if you leave the setup here and jump out of the setup, you're good to replace those files.
Can you do so?
Yeah, you can do so. You can look at the bottom left corner. You can see some updates there.
And here we go. It's a while to initiate. Yeah. And then we should see that something is going to change.
And now updates are coming in.
So that's particularly important because auto calibration is often used to make systems auto-maintaining. So with fixed installed cameras and let's say a weekly schedule to realign a screen in an entrance of a showroom or in a museum. And therefore a fixed setup that can be replaced dynamically without having without needing an operator, that is important for that. And by that mechanism, this is achieved.
Yeah, of course. So now I can jump back into my setup here, and the playback is back. Also, the test patterns are back. So everything fine there. Actually, a little issue there with the blend files. So we will fix that for sure. If you put it in, it's not recognized directly. You have to click it on and off again, the warped mode here, and then it's reapplied back. That's actually a little bug in our software. Sorry for that. We will fix that for sure. That's it for now, I think.
That's the
main things. So very easy and quick setup.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And
thank you.
Yeah, let's have a look at some questions from your side.
Well, maybe we can put a bit of emphasis on where are resources, so where to find more information about it.
Sure.
So let's just have a look at it. We have, so there we go. Anything you need to know about how to operate a calibration, which software is available, how to operate it, you find in our help desk, helpdeskvioso.com. It is open to everyone. And you can download software for evaluation. In this case, you want to evaluate Vioso Integrate. You can test that. You can use our support during testing. So it's not that you need to apply or do something. We want you to know how it works before you decide to use it. So this is our commitment to you as a skilled operator. And therefore, support.vioso.com opens support file, so you simply write it support@vioso.com. So it's a big invitation. Try it, use all the help that is available, and make your steps using auto calibration and Pandoras Box.
Yeah, cool. Same, more or less, applies for us. Of course, you can find the links in the chat in the GoToWebinar tool soon. So you can click them, of course. You know, email addressing, support email address. You can phone us. You can go through the forum file. Thanks. Yeah, and of course, you will find this webinar on our YouTube channel, as all the other ones too, to have a look back into it if you want to see it again. Yeah, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And yeah, let's go through a question and answer session. So we have a little laptop here so we can read your questions.
So
it's the chat.
It's a chat.
We forgot, because of time issues, can you please provide the organizer rights for Emanuel? You know how? No, I'm coming over. Sorry, short delay. So now we should be able to see your questions here. All right.
So yeah. So one question is, I see.
You have to read it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a little bit small. So first question is if that works with older versions of Pandoras Box. So is there any limitation where you would say we need at least version XYZ to operate that mode of DirectX and blend file?
Yes, you will need version 4, I think. Actually, we are at 6. So the version I'm using is 6.4.2. So this workflow is available for a long time now.
Okay, yeah, that's also our experience. The first time operators were using X files is dates 3 years back or something like that.
3?
Yeah, could be.
It's more like, I think, 15 or something 15. Like that.
Okay, well, I'm not so much aware about the versions, but good to know that your version 5.1 and 6 is supported. So just give me a moment. Need to get used to that tool as well. So all cameras in Pandoras Box are at the same place and use the same field of view. Exactly. This is what I understand, which makes this workflow a bit special. Every projector or every display looks exactly at the whole content, and you don't take care about its location in real world, because that is what the auto calibration replaces.
Yeah. So, sorry.
Go on.
I don't want to interrupt you. If
fine,
you want to go. Okay. So that's what I explained already earlier. So the object files from Vioso, they have the information with them, which part of the texture they have to use. And that's the reason why I have to provide the full texture to all these X files, right? And I will provide another webinar. I think it's next Friday, please. Or what's the date? Sorry? 17th?
Yeah.
Okay, the 17th of June. Right. Let's see. We will provide that information for sure. I will go through these things a little bit more detailed at that point. For now, it's important to know that for this workflow, this is not a general workflow. So there are different possibilities and different workflows possible. So there's mainly 2D, 3D workflow. That's completely different. But also for the 2D workflow, if you're working with splits, the workflow is different. So, but I think the time for today is not enough to go through that too. So that's maybe whatever the reaction of your side is, how many questions we get on that, we will provide also that information, of course. Yeah, this is a different workflow, but for this DOM setup, actually, which you can run by one file, this is the workflow. If you have to split files, the workflow will be different.
Thank you. Greetings to Switzerland. Jonas said that our mouse cursors were not visible. So if you review the webinar, maybe it might be a bit difficult to spot. And at least from our side, we will do our best to make a transcript. So simply to make a tutorial, again, pointing out where to click, which option to choose that accompanies the video. Next time we need to check the mouse pointer visibility. Another very important question is, as you have heard or learned, that the calibration also takes care about the color matching and brightness adjustments of projectors. We didn't cover that, but yes, this matching is also transferred to Pandoras Box. So the blend files have the information about the color degradation and the brightness adjustment, which we luckily tested yesterday, so we can assure that this is working.
This is the part blend map. So where in the very middle of the screen, you can see that, unfortunately, you cannot see my mouse, but yeah, I can blink a bit with the warp checkbox, so I turn it on and off. So there you can see also in the camera, yeah, now it's not visible there.
With the white testing pattern.
But this is the place where this file has to go to, and it calibrates the blend areas and the color correction if you use it that way.
Yes. So in the workflow on Pandora Box side, nothing changes. It's simply that this information that is gathered during the calibration is transported. So in fact, this is already a pretty nice file format to exchange. There's not that much missing. There might be some more ideas in the future, black level compensation, but not for today. So another question is, if does Vioso have an API so that you can connect it with Widget Designer or even with other show control applications like Extra and stuff? Answer, yes. The clients can be handled via TCP/IP or UDP. Again, I can redirect you to our help desk that has an extensive documentation, which kinds of commands are available. But the most typical is make a recalibration based on a button click on a Widget Designer surface or by schedule. So everything that you can control via TCP/IP will work instantly with the Vioso API, or we call it remote control. API is something more. If, for example, Christy decides to implement the calibration directly, then there's even a deeper API. Just because you will read the term API in our documentation, that's something different. Remote control is the keyword. I will make sure that this is mentioned in the tutorial that we bring up to in terms of Pandoras Box.
Cool. Yeah, and this is also important for the workflow. You have to leave the playback of the X files, so leave the setup thing to make it possible to to override them. Right?
Exactly.
The Windows thing. So the widget question is a really nice one. I like that. Yes, it's possible.
Yeah.
And that workflow is then automating the whole thing completely.
Yeah. But I think what we would need to keep in mind is, let's say you have your Widget Designer and you want to automate both programs, then you would have a sequence like stop output of Pandoras Box, make a recalibration, do the export, close the calibration output, go back, fire up a, let's say, testing pattern and say, yes, it's good or bad, or even skip that step. And this is all simply firing UDP or TCP commands somewhere in the network. And it's only the calibration software really that need to address. So everything is then transparent handled, however you put the Pandoras Box layout. So this is working in a similar mindset as the Pandoras Box Manager. So you do not touch the client, you touch just the manager. So I think that easily fits in.
Cool.
Yeah. So another question is if we can have 6 projectors with one Pandoras Box output. In fact, yes, because that's what we're doing right now with a Octo server. And by using Mosaic, these outputs are combined, not just because, mainly because of increased performance. In terms of calibration, it doesn't matter if it's a Mosaic or not Mosaic, but with this kind of setup, we have even up to 8 from a single machine running perfectly in sync and even mixing, let's say, a quartet and an 8-hat nicely fits together. So I think you can live in a world of Pandoras Box very flexible.
Yes, sure.
Even if you would extend with, don't know if that is supported, but if you have data path FX Force or other kind of extenders or using matrices or event masters and all this kind of stuff, sorry, Spider.
Yes.
It's from at least from point of the calibration, as long as you can directly access one projector at a time, it is supported.
Yes, and from our side, we have our own hardware provides up to 8 outputs, not 8 times 4K though. So that's the maximum there is full HD, so 1920 by 1080 times 8. And the Mosaic setup is you have to use it if you output more than 4 outputs. So if you extend over a quad, you have to use the Mosaic workflow to make it work.
Thank you. Now a question I would also like to ask. Maybe it's silly, but if I ask it, it's easy. No, silly, I mean, if I ask it that way. Now we have put X files, so object files, into the system. Can we edit these files? Is there some possibility to warp in, dive in and do changes? That's great.
So you can, I can do it. I think we are gone through. So if I destroy something, it's maybe not too bad. I can go for these X files and I can say create editable mesh from mesh. So, and with this option, I can now use this mesh file, this Pandoras Box mesh file, instead of the X file from Vioso. And this is distorted in the same way. So if I put that in there, it's not changing something on the screen yet, but now I can go for the warping tool in Pandoras Box and warp that and manually adjust that file. Let's go. This is display 1.
Well, that's awesome, because as nice as an automatic calibration is, if you really need to do some very last-minute changes without leaving a running setup, obviously we have a very good way within Pandoras Box to. It's can't see it. I can assure you, it's really working, and you do not need to.
Maybe you can put on the camera on your screen.
Yeah.
And then we can show your desktop, and then people can see that.
Yeah, and that's not so bad idea, because so far you did not have any view on the whole dome.
And now I destroyed it.
Now you destroyed it, yes. But
I can go back to your X file.
Yes,
so anytime I can do that. So it will be back.
Okay, so this. So in fact, that is what the fisheye camera, is actually filming. And here you see this moving grid. This is now Thomas doing the warp in Pandoras Box, and really that's very helpful. It happens that shortly because an event starts, something has changed, and this is at least a predictive way to make something fit that's not fitting, unless you do the recalibration. That's really good. Good question. Thank you for asking. I wanted to ask you that, by the way.
Cool.
All the time.
Thank you. So I kick back in the X file. So and then so there it's
goes
looking
back again. Very well. That's
cool.
Good.
Thanks for that question.
So So I question that I am hooking up with a question that just come in. If you only want to fix one projector, do you need to run all the calibration to all 12 projectors? One question, to some extent, is answered. If you put it, if you rearrange it manually, you can do just, of course, you handle just a single projector. If one projector is off and you just do not want to hassle with the camera, you simply make it in Pandoras Box. If you go the Vioso way, and if the camera has not moved, that's the key. If the camera is still in place, you can simply scan a single projector and calculate it back into the existing compound of the other 12 projectors. And again, the key is that the camera has not moved. Assuming that this, if it's a fixed setup with fixed mounted cameras, this is the standard way, of course. So question is answered that way. In the Vioso way, you can just scan one if you have the camera still in position, and otherwise, without leaving Pandora's Box, you can do manual adjustments there. And also a good question is, what happens with the camera after a job is done? Does this camera need to be there? It does not. The camera is just required during the scan. So during you see these white patterns and the dots. As soon as you're happy with the result and do not plan to redo it, the camera can be removed, disconnected. Even adjustments on manual adjustments on brightness, color matching that do not require the camera can be done. So the camera is just an ad hoc tool and definitely is not required by Pandora's Box. Actually, Pandora's Box doesn't know nothing about the existence of this camera. So thank you for these very good questions. They brought up quite good lights on it. So far, these are the questions that are in the list. And the chat, cool. I also can't see something new. So if there's something in your head, now is a good time to put it in.
Yeah, anytime is a good time to put questions in. So we provided you the links already. So feel free to contact the Kulux, the Chrissy support. I'm not, yeah, this is because there's still the Kulux word written. Sorry. So support.pandorasbox@chrissydigital. That's our email address, direct email support. And yeah, feel free to browse our forums. Feel free to contact the Vioso company. The links are provided in the chat. Yeah, thank you for watching. And yeah, hope to see you soon again. Thank you, Emanuel.
Thank you for
being our host.
And thank you for being our guest, taking the long journey to us. That was really a pleasure. I learned something very important today. And there were quite a lot of questions towards us, how to deal with Kulux and Pandora's Box. And now I'm feeling much, much more comfortable. And just to get the last question done, camera. Any questions you have about specific cameras, directly contact us. We can find out if that camera that you are thinking about is working or not. It's exactly what I meant. Use our support to qualify if it will work in the mindset that you have or not. So it's not just our cameras working, but camera is a big and huge topic. So this is our support for you in pre-sales condition to go through that. Thank you again. Let's see how we meet again. Which there will be much more possibilities, 3D calibration, auto mapping, back level again.
Yeah, we'll see.
If you like us to do that once again,
yeah, give us feedback.
Give us feedback, and we are more happy to do so. Thank you also to Christy to open up to us this way. It's also not so. It also could be done different way. Yeah, Thank you so much. Thanks for watching, and greetings from Düsseldorf.
Stay healthy. See you next time. Bye-bye.